There you have it then. Erik ten Hag has been sacked by Manchester United. He has left his role as men's first team manager Monday, October the 28th, 2024. That is it. Erik ten Hag has lost his job. It's been a long time coming. I think we can all agree with that. Although I will say I'm quite surprised that they've done it today. I really thought that even with the nature of that West Ham loss on Sunday, I thought that maybe a decision had been made, but they wouldn't actually trigger it until we were in a clear slate. Maybe the next international break or something. Ineos had decided to give Ten Hag from the Brentford game through the Europa League and through this game that United had lost at West Ham. They decided to give Erik ten Hag that chance. Didn't act on it in the last international break. And that's why I'm quite surprised that they've done it today. That's why I'm quite surprised that they've done it today. But they have. United have put out a club statement. Erik ten Hag has left his role as Manchester United's men's first team manager. He was appointed in April 2022 and led the club to 2 domestic trophies, winning the Carabao Cup in 2023 and FA Cup in 2024. Grateful to Erik for everything he's done during his time with us and wish him well for the future. Ruud van Nistelrooy will take charge of the team as interim head coach. Interesting language. Interim head coach, supported by the current coaching team, whilst the permanent head coach is recruited. So that is the decision that United have made. I'm Scott, by the way. This is the Promised Land podcast, all about Manchester United. Subscribe to us on Apple and Spotify, on audio, and on YouTube as well, if you've not done so already. Please get in the comments. Let me know what you think about this situation, whether you think it's the right time. I'm pretty sure everyone thinks it is the right time, to be honest. But get in touch with me as well on social media at @_Scott Saunders on X, Instagram, and TikTok. And let's get into it. I'll bring you some reaction to this now. I'll talk about maybe some candidates who are in line to succeed Erik ten Hag. But I think, per the club statement, they will take their time to appoint a permanent head coach. Lots of names in the frame. There was a report last week, Thursday, Friday, from Chris Wheeler in the Daily Mail linking another 4-5 names to this job with Erik ten Hag still in charge of it. But obviously the defeat of West Ham was the final straw. For Ineos, I'm quite surprised. After they gave Ten Hag the game with Brentford and the game in the Europa League against Fenerbahce and this game with West Ham, I'm quite surprised that they've done it now with another game coming up this week against Leicester and then Chelsea at the weekend. You know, the games come really thick and fast. And it's funny because I was recording another podcast as this news broke. I was actually 20 minutes late to it because I was so engrossed in whatever monologue or whatever I was saying down the camera in this episode that will now never see the light of day. I've seen that some people have suggested when I tweeted, okay, oh my, time to re-record. I think people might want to see the other version of this podcast, but, you know, I'll keep that one for me. I've deleted it already. But yeah, unfortunately, that won't be coming out. But I did say on that podcast that I don't think that United will make this decision now and make this change now because of how they've acted in the recent past, how they gave Ten Hag, you know, the Brentford game, the Fenerbahce game, and now the West Ham game, because they'll be on the hop, really. They could have done all their due diligence and made a change in the last international break and then move forward with it, but they gave him a couple of other games. And I said at the time, it's only going to get worse. If United lose one of these games, or if they lose or they don't play well, or they lose a couple of these games, then the pressure is going to hike up, and it has hiked up to the point where they cannot stand by Erik ten Hag anymore. So quite surprised by that. But look, I don't think any of us really can sit here and say that Ten Hag didn't have enough time to turn things around. When you look at the cold, hard facts, United are 14th in the Premier League table. They've scored 8 Premier League goals in 9 matches. They are winless in Europe. They've drawn 3 out of 3 in the Europa League. I think they're 21st in the Europa League group. And it's just not good enough, and it hasn't been good enough for a long time. As much as the FA Cup win was an amazing day, the Carabao Cup win was an amazing day. These are trophies that, you know, are secondary. And maybe that's a little bit disrespectful to the FA Cup, and everyone loves an FA Cup win. But at the end of the day, United need to be challenging for Premier League titles. And there is they're so far away from it at the moment. They're so far away that it was all about, can United come top 4? And United are by a distance as it stands, like nowhere near good enough to be even considered top six or one of the best six clubs in the country. Really, things could turn around quite quickly. Obviously, that you see this happen all the time, but Ten Hag. I'll say this to start with because I do feel like if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that I've backed Ten Hag, and I was very, very vocal in saying that I felt like he deserved, after winning the FA Cup, at least the start of the season to prove that he could turn the club around. United finished 8th last season, and that was really enough in most people's eyes to warrant change. I was different in that sense, and I thought, look, if this guy has proven 2 years in a row that he can win big trophies and win big finals against Man City, who were the best team in England at that point, maybe he's worth sticking by. But that was always on the caveat that United started this season well, and we started to see real upward momentum. But instead, it's got worse. They've fallen from 8th to 14th in the Premier League, and you can count the number of wins they've had this season on one hand, and it's just not good enough. It just is not good enough. I don't think anybody can really have any complaints about this. But I will say, to start with, Ten Hag has given us some really good moments, although few and far between. I don't want to be one of those people who's gonna say he was never good enough, or he was. Maybe people would argue that he is out of his depth, but I feel like the undercurrent of things that he was working with, like other managers before him at Manchester United, the undercurrent of things that he was working with and that he had to turn around, they were just so strong that he wasn't only the manager, and there were things that he had to sort out. He had the Cristiano Ronaldo discipline issue, which led to Ronaldo leaving the club. He had to imprint a style of play on a group of players that were an amalgamation of players from different managers, and now that problem has been exacerbated, obviously, because United's new ownership have bought players that Ten Hag has worked with before. In this case, so whoever comes in next, and there is no word on who that is as I record this, whoever comes in next is probably going to have a similar problem. But what has changed above the manager in the last 6 to 8 months is the fact that there is now a football structure in place. And the new manager, whoever that is, will come in, and the club should be different, But obviously, Ten Hag was given an extension to his contract on the old terms of his contract in the summer to quell some of the speculation. But the only way that speculation was going to continue to be put under wraps and to continue to keep quiet was if results turned around and performances turned around, and they just did not in the end. So, look, it's a sad day, really, but maybe joyous for some people who've wanted this day to come for a long time. Look, I'll never sit here and celebrate a manager losing his job, because I think that Ten Hag did do a lot of good. But at the end of the day, he had a chance to turn things around. And no matter who was at fault, whether you look at the West Ham game on Sunday, the fact that Diogo Dalot misses an open goal, they had 6 chances. They could have been 5-6-0 up by half time. And if that had happened and he'd have won the game yesterday, this decision wouldn't have come. But you can't argue with it. And the time is now to think about what happens next. And like, it's funny because, as I mentioned just now, I was recording another podcast and I said about myself and how I feel, and how I'm sure a lot of you who are listening to this or who are watching this feel, that there's a detachment. I feel a detachment to the club. I don't want to watch them. I don't want to, because I know how this is going to go. I don't want to watch them. I don't get excited to watch them. I'm sure if there's people who travel all around the country, going home and away to United matches, that spending your hard-earned money on going to watch this team consistently make the same mistakes over and over again and lose in the same fashion over and over again, that must be grating. Think about the state of mind of the fan base at the moment, having seen such a bad start to this season on top of the awful season that was last season, after a season of promise in his first season. It's just got to a point where I think everybody needed this change. And the way that Ten Hag was speaking towards the back end of last week as well, maybe this is what he wanted, but he just didn't want to stick up his resignation because it meant that his payoff would have been, he wouldn't have got his payoff. So look, it's I don't want to take the negative route on this, but when you say things like, look, I don't count the Tottenham defeat, you know, we lost 3-0, but then we had a poor decision go against us and Bruno Fernandes was sent off, and therefore I don't count that as a defeat, essentially is what you said. That, you can't say that. You cannot say that. And there's definitely a number of things that he has said in the past that have rubbed a lot of people up the wrong way. And what United have to do now is make sure that they get somebody in who offers the full package, not only is able to, deal with top coaches in a tactical sense and get the most out of the players, because this is a talented group of players. I say this every time. This is a really talented group of players. It's an expensively assembled squad, very talented group that is not showing its best. People always come back to the fact of like, which players can you say that he's managed, that he's improved? And at a point in his first season, you could say that about a number of players, including Marcus Rashford. But that drop-off has been stark. It's been visible. And we're at a point now where, yeah, that is a fair fact. That is fair. But there's been a long cultural issue at United, which means that there's been managers in this club over the past few years, in the past 11 years, that have not been able to get the most out of the parts that they have. And Erik ten Hag has fallen foul to that as well. But that's a cultural issue that I think Erik ten Hag had to fix when he was initially brought in, because the people above him weren't capable of it. John Murtough, Richard Arnold, I don't think ever succeeded in weeding out the bad eggs. And I think Ten Hag had to take that job on himself. But now there is a football structure in place which should, if they do their jobs properly, which should really start to, or at least you hope, to make sure that this endless cycle of manager comes in, you see an uplift, and then they just regress to the point where they're sacked. You have to hope this time that that cycle ends, and that cycle, that cultural stagnation, that cultural issue that United have had for a long, long time, you have to hope that is fixed by somebody who probably will come in as, looking at this statement, Van Nistelrooy is interim head coach. I think the next person will be a head coach. But who will that head coach be? That is the big question. It is Ruud van Nistelrooy, as I mentioned, for the interim. I think a lot of people maybe could have seen this come in when he was initially appointed as Erik ten Hag's, one of Erik ten Hag's assistant managers. Club legend coming back has a lot of parallels to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, although Van Nistelrooy does have some relatively top-level coaching experience, albeit in the Eredivisie with PSV. Van Nistelrooy has come in to take charge of the team as interim while United find the right person and the right profile to come in and take the job on full-time. It's a big, big decision that they have to make here. Really big decision. They've spoken to a number of people, if you believe the media reports that have gone around over the last week or so. The Daily Mail, Chris Wheeler from the Daily Mail, said in a report last week that United has spoken to Xavi Hernandez in Barcelona, former Barcelona manager, one of the greatest players of all time, obviously. And I think maybe as it stands, I would maybe put him at the head of the list to, not my personal opinion or my personal desire, but I think the way things are lining up, it seems to me that it may be him to start with. You can never rule out Gareth Southgate. I don't want to say it, guys. I don't want to say it, but he is on the market. And maybe the optics of that will be so terrible. But yeah, I've talked about cultural problems, that kind of thing. One thing Gareth Southgate did do in the past with England was turn around the team to the point where they are now ready to win big trophies. And they've hired a manager in Thomas Tuchel, who I said last month I thought United should have appointed to go and win the World Cup in 2026. But obviously, Xavi's name has been linked. Ruben Amorim, I think, is one of the big candidates to get this job. Although with Hugo Viana's move to Manchester City as sporting director to replace Siki Begiristain at the end of the season, with the rumors over Pep Guardiola's future, if United don't act fast, I think maybe you could see Ruben Amorim ended up on the other side of Manchester. If obviously there's lots of things hanging around City at the moment in terms of the charges, this kind of thing, but Amorim has long been tipped, was wanted by Liverpool a little bit as well, long been tipped for a big step up and a big job, and has proven himself with Sporting, obviously. But, United will be taking a gamble on him as well. Thomas Frank is another name in the frame who I'll talk about in a second. Maybe I'll come back to each of these and talk about them in a little bit more depth. Maybe it's not the right time today to talk about each of these people, each of these managers in their own right. Maybe I'll do that in a later episode because it does seem like United are going to take their time with this, and maybe we won't even get an appointment until after this group of matches. United play. Obviously, they have fixtures in the Europa League and in the Premier League and in the League Cup as well. United play Leicester at Old Trafford on Sunday, the 10th of November. So I think that's 4 games left. They've got Leicester in the League Cup, Chelsea at home, then a Europa League tie, and then Leicester again in the Premier League. And then there's another international break. So maybe we won't see anybody actually appointed until after that Leicester game. So that maybe gives Ruud van Nistelrooy 4 matches to be in charge. Maybe, who knows, if he does well, he gets the rest of the season like Ollie. But I dread to think of the comparisons that will be made between the previous ownership and the previous decision makers and the current decision makers if that were to happen. I think United need to find somebody who is able to take this team on beyond the end of this season. I think the season is still early enough to be able to go and find the guy that you want. Find the right person that you want that can take United out of this mess and take them into the positions they should be fighting for. Edin Terzic is another name. And I think, God, honestly, that is, for me, I think that is one that you stay away from. I know he made the Champions League final with Dortmund last season, but to be honest, the Dortmund season in the league last season was poor. And that is a big concern that I really have with a lot of these managers. Out of that list, I don't think that there is one manager in there that strikes me as, bona fide, an amazing replacement. I can get behind that right away. And that's why I went big on Thomas Tuchel previously, because he was out of work. He was ready for a job. He ended up taking the England job. And we know that United and Ineos spoke to him. For whatever reason, that didn't come about. But look, I think what Tuchel would have done for me is get United's current playing staff play into a level more of what you'd expect of them. The question always was, though, would he be the right long-term fit? And maybe he wasn't, and maybe that's why he wasn't appointed. But if you don't make that decision, maybe it indicates that United are looking for someone who they believe is a long-term fit and can move forward with this team beyond the end of the season and transform them into... Look, they've outlined they want to win the Premier League by 2028. That is miles away. Miles away. Absolutely miles away at the moment. But they do have some quality players who should be playing far better than they are. But I'll just outline this. This would be my choice, and this one may get turned down and rubbished pretty soon after this podcast. But for me, Julian Nagelsmann is right there. Maybe he's committed to Germany. Maybe he has. But it's absolutely worth a question. If there is somebody that you want to come in and play football the modern way and get your players playing and get them... He's got a lot of big club experience with Bayern. Obviously, he left there and, maybe it didn't work out for him and maybe that wasn't the right fit because he was a little bit too prickly. But look, for me, I think there is a coach out there that I think he is... Of all the managers out there that are relatively available, I think he is the best option, to be honest. The World Cup's still 18 months, 2 years away, and maybe there's a get out in that. maybe there is a get out. I think what I would do first if I was Ineos would be have a crack at that. Have a crack at it. See if you can do it. Because for me, Julian Nagelsmann ticks all the boxes. Young coach, modern tactical thinker. I know he's been beaten 5-0 at Old Trafford before, by the way, under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. But in terms of the style of football that he plays, in terms of his tactical brain, in terms of his profile fit, in terms of his age, everything, I think that guy, Julian Nagelsmann, is the guy that you go and try and get first. That is what I'll say. And if that's not possible, then maybe that's where you look at potentially other options. I know people say Xabi Alonso. I don't think that's ever going to be possible. To be honest, I think when you've got a Liverpool allegiance, you've got a Real Madrid job, especially after they've just been beaten 4-0 by Barcelona in El Clasico at the weekend. Seems like Ancelotti is off at some point, and that seems like the logical step for Xabi Alonso at the end of the season if he does leave Bayer Leverkusen as expected to walk into Real Madrid. And then there's other options out there. I think I've maybe put Ruben Amorim as my second choice in that situation, but I've spoken about Amorim in the past and essentially said, look, if when you think of Erik ten Hag when he came in, he was famed for how Ajax played football. He was famed for tearing Real Madrid apart 4-1 at the Bernabeu in the Champions League and getting an Ajax team with a generation of really wonderful players to the latter stages of European competition. He'd won a few titles with Ajax as well. And it seemed like he was the coach. He was the head coach out there that was ripe for the picking for another big job. And United went and got him. For whatever reason, it didn't work out like that. And maybe Amorim is that next one. Maybe in that situation now. But I did point out a few months ago that I do have concerns about it. Like if Ten Hag is unable to get like a tune out of this team in a tactical sense, are you just making the same mistake? I don't know. Like I don't know Ruben Amorim strongly enough, but maybe a bit of a flag there for me. Edin Terzic I've already talked about. I think that is just a name that's been thrown in there because he made the Champions League final with Dortmund last season, but Dortmund's league campaign last year was not good enough to, I think, even warrant him being in this conversation. If he ends up appointed, then I'm sorry, unfortunately, and I'll have to come back to this and revisit that point. But there's a couple of others as well. Thomas Frank obviously is liked by Ineos, and I get it. Rate him as a manager. Has had Brentford, firmly established as a really solid Premier League team. They've taken some big wins in the past, and maybe Thomas Frank is somebody who deserves a step up. But you just know, and this is my reservation with him, you just know that the moment he doesn't win a game, it's, he's only ever managed Brentford. He can't deal with the pressure. I can't be bothered with that. I really can't. It's if that happened, I get behind it, obviously, but I do have my reservations on that choice. And then Xavi Hernandez as well as the other one. There was, as I mentioned just now, I think he would be maybe considered the front runner in the sense of his big club experience and just the report, the nature of the reporting over the last few days. His wife as well posted a picture, I believe, on Instagram over the weekend with one of their children wearing a Man United shirt. So read into that what you will. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe it was done on purpose to stoke more speculation, but it's been reported that they've spoken to Xavi within the last 10 days, 12 weeks or so, 12 days or so in Barcelona to see whether he would be willing to take on this job. And I've maybe put him at the front of the queue at the moment. In terms of likelihood, there's just what I think. But look, again, I can't sit here and say that Xavi Hernandez is going to be an immediate upgrade and an immediate success. You might get a bit of manager bounce, but you only need to look at what happened with Barcelona with him. I know he won the league with Barcelona, but was often criticized for having not playing in the Barcelona way and for a boring style of football. And I just think people might clamor for a decision like this, but then there's things in the recent past, like criticism over his style of football and underperformance in his final season at Barcelona. Whatever you think the reasons are behind that, whether that's the political stuff off the field or not, the fact that some were complaining about his style of football at the time, knowing just what we've been through with Erik ten Hag about complaints about the style of football being boring and not good enough for Manchester United's history. Is that really does that really suggest to you that he is the right long-term fit? I don't know. So that's just some thoughts that I have on all of those different candidates. And maybe I'll go into them over the next few days in a little bit more detail. But these are my thoughts on those candidates. But I will just outline again. Julian Nagelsmann is my first choice. Go and get him if it's a possibility. I think for me, you have to look at this and you have to check. And if it's not possible, then fine. But Manchester United is a big club in need of a manager to turn them around, or a head coach to turn them around. And I think he's proven with the German national team that he can really get them firing. The German national team were on their knees when he took over, and they went out of the last tournament quite unluckily to Spain. But the level of performance from the German national team over the past year, 18 months has been really good, really improved. And maybe that is the best proving ground of recent times to say that Nagelsmann is the right person to take this job on. But obviously, Ineos will have a lot of work to do with that. There's going to be a bunch of other names. This story will develop, obviously, over the next few days. And I'm sure that the media, who absolutely love to report on the absolute mire that is Manchester United, will have a field day with every single option that they can talk about, every list they can make about which manager is the right manager to take over Manchester United now. It's going to be a difficult few weeks or a difficult few days. But maybe you can argue that we've reached the lowest point, because I'll circle back to this now just before I go. Won't keep you too long here, because there's going to be so much reaction to this. I know if you're a United fan, there's probably plenty of places you go and get your content from. And a lot of people may be saying the same things, but a lot of it is instant reaction to, oh my God, this has happened. And I'm sure everyone's in shock. I'm still in shock, I got to be honest. I'm really shocked that they've made this decision today, just because I thought it was easier to make the decision a couple of weeks ago. Because if you go into a period of 3 games and you don't get the results that you want, you're just going to be worse off. And there's going to be too much turnaround time, or too little turnaround time between matches to not be caught on the hop. So Ruud van Nistelrooy will have to deal with that immediate interim difficulty. But club legend, let's wish him all the best, and let's make sure that the club and the players are backed properly here, and wish Ruud van Nistelrooy the best of luck. But what I don't want to see is decisions made on a whim again. You need to, and Ineos need to, the decision makers here need to make sure that they make the right choice with whoever this next manager is long term, and not be swayed by immediate results, or not be swayed by upturns in. Yeah, there could be a reaction from this team. There really could be, because this is a talented group of players, like I say. But don't get carried away in that, because I think maybe there's still some people here who listen to this podcast who firmly believe that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer should have got more time. But, I think there were shortcomings with Ole that have maybe been glossed over in the days since his sacking. But what you need to find now, and what Ineos need to find now, is the right person to take charge of this job and to take them forward, who can get this team moving, get them moving straight away, and improve results straight away, because United are 14th in the Premier League. And I will say this: while they're 14th, there is real big potential for this to turn around quickly. If United are turning these missed chances into goals, and those goals results in wins, because they have been making a lot of chances recently. I think they're top of the table in the Premier League so far this season for chances created and chances missed. I think they've missed 22 out of 26 big chances that they've made so far this season, which is the highest in the Premier League. So there is talent there. There is an opportunity there. And while United are 14th, I think if you look at the table and look at the points and try and, it's impossible, I know, but ignore the positioning. You look at the points and then just think, okay, right, if we can put 3-4 wins together here, that's an immediate jump. That's an immediate jump, and you're not right back in the conversation with the teams above them. So, look, I think maybe that is a trigger in why Ineos have made this decision as well, just looking at it from the outside. But it is, it's a big day, this. They've decided. They have made the decision to sack Erik ten Hag. Big shock. Really, in the circumstances of like the day that it is, I think to me it's come as a big shock, a big surprise. But in the bigger picture, it is really not. I think Ten Hag has had a lot of time. And look, performances and results, league position, Europa League position have not been good enough so far this season. And I don't think anybody can really have any complaints. So it's now about United moving on and United making sure that the mistakes that they've made in the first few weeks of the season are eradicated and that we see the team moving upwards and quickly. Look, this has been more of a quick reaction to this news because I recorded a podcast and then I had to essentially step out of it because I'd found out that this happened on my last recording. But this is these are my initial thoughts to it. I will be back at some point soon to run through this in a bit more of a measured fashion, I guess, because look, when you're on the hop with breaking news and this kind of thing, it's difficult to kind of collect your thoughts together properly. But I think, look, it's maybe I just need 24 hours or so to just come back to this and then say, right, okay, this is how we move forward. And we'll go from there, really, because there's going to be so much speculation going on around this job post now, because it's one of the biggest jobs in world football, and it is now free for somebody else to take the reins in. Who will that be? We will run through it on an episode to come. Anyway, look, guys, I've been Scott. Please subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already on Apple and Spotify for the audio, on YouTube as well, The Promise and a Manchester United podcast. Follow me as well at _Scott Saunders on Instagram, X, and TikTok. Plenty of thoughts, I'm sure, on X over the next few days around this. And look, I'll just finish this with Erik ten Hag did achieve some really good things at Manchester United. And as bad as it is at the end, I think maybe he does deserve a thanks. And I think the players Bruno Fernandes have seen as one who has come out and said a big thank you and a big appreciation to the manager who's just lost his job. And I'll echo that as well. I think there have been some good times, even though this has been mired in mostly some awful results, but they have had some great days as well. There's been some great wins under Erik ten Hag. But look, unfortunately, you need more than that. You need more than the FA Cup and more than the Carabao Cup in order to keep your job at United, because this club should always be measured to the standards of winning Premier League titles. And I understand that United are miles away from that at the moment, but they need to get back to that conversation as quickly as possible. And ultimately, downgrading of expectations and downgrading of, the day-to-day management of the club, it cannot go on. So what United need to do now is make sure that they shoot for the stars and make sure that they get as close to winning the title in 2028. If that's what they want to do, they need to take the steps to get there. And these players are much more capable of playing better than they've been showing and getting better results than they've been showing. So it's time to see which manager who will be tasked with doing that. And it's up to Ruud van Nistelrooy in the interim as head coach to take things over. So Erik ten Hag has left Manchester United. They have made the decision to sack Erik ten Hag, the Dutchman, after 2 and a bit years as Manchester United manager. Let me know your thoughts, guys, in the comments and on Twitter and on Instagram at _Scott Saunders as well. I'll see you soon, because the Manchester United crazy news cycle has just taken several steps up a notch. Until next time, everyone, this has been the Promise and Podcast. See you soon.